very warm welcome to all of you both for this, which is one of a part of a series of three debates on the role of the private sector as a shareholder in a renewed social contract. And we're going to take a view about that, which is going to look at all aspects of society: civil society, private sector, industry, government, member state, European Commission. Whose role is it to make sure we have a better society? Who takes the risks? Whose expectations are we meeting? And to answer that question, we have the governor of the Bank of Belgium. We have a vice president from MasterCard. We have the tax man from Europe. And we have a civil society representative that runs We Move Europe.
What we expect firms to do is produce the stuff following the rules that have been set by authorities. Many firms pretend things, and then when you look at what they're doing, at the end of the day, they're focusing on maximizing profits and producing the stuff, which is in a way what you expect from them.
Do you feel you have a role as a private sector, a global household name, right, to play a role in creating a better society?
We absolutely have a role to play, because we're living in a time where it's not just one crisis that we're dealing with. You know, we're not just dealing with a pandemic, or we're not just dealing with a climate crisis, or just dealing with an energy or a cost of living crisis. We're dealing with a convergence of all of these crises at the same moment. It's absolutely a moment for us, you know, at a societal level, at a business level, at a governmental level, to question what is our role in addressing all of these crises. And I do think that we've seen, you know, a blurring, or at least a better interaction between, you know, how we engage with on the positive outcome of what we can do here now, building back a better society. This is not a philanthropic effort. We are not doing this. We are not leaning into these topics. It's not just about philanthropy. It's about making good decisions that support your business. When you're building back, when you're defining regulations, it's important that you're thinking about the balance of the strict element of the regulation as well as the incentivizing that regulation, and how you do both.
At the end of the day, your bottom line is money, right? And therefore you're left with what? And what do you make of the values that we've been speaking about?
Are businesses defined only by our bottom line? No. The answer is simply no. Today, across Europe, if I do not have a strong statement as to what I'm doing to support society, what I'm doing to support, you know, the environment, the economy, I can't hire staff. You know, I won't be able to get anyone to join my company. You have to be perceived to be beyond money. We have a saying within MasterCard. We say it's doing well by doing good. What we mean by that is doing well financially by doing good efforts for the economy and for society. With a fractured society, business is not going to do well. And without, you know, a planet that's failing, neither business nor society is going to do well. There are bigger goals than just pure profit. I truly believe that that's been understood and well understood by the business community, and that we're all leaning into it in a very different way. So when we're thinking about our suppliers, when we're thinking about our customers, how much influence, both soft and hard, that we can actually apply on those to ensure that those partners are actually also engaged on this topic in a positive way. So the governance model is there. Again, it's important for businesses to ensure that this isn't about philanthropic efforts. It's important for businesses to build this in to their DNA, that it becomes part of the business model. Otherwise, we've seen it won't be successful. So that's really what we're trying to do.
Fundamentally, we are living in a market failure. And if your role is to deal with that, then surely, I mean, climate is a massive example of where the market has failed fundamentally to deal with that. I do think that there's a lot of different strands of thought happening at the moment. And I agree that if you are, as a company, you want to have customers, you want to have consumers. I mean, lots of businesses, they're looking throughout their value chain, they're collaborating along their value chain, talking to their suppliers to see if they're reducing emissions. This is happening, and it's not going to change, I think.
Just reflect on the debate. And similarly, if you want, what do you want out of this?
There's a magnificent awakening that's happening within the private sector. But if it's so true that companies now want to have honest commitments to contributing to social welfare and to sustainable development, then how come political leaders are still making decisions that show that they believe that corporations will flee regulation, that they will go offshore, or that they will move around Europe on the basis of where they're regulated or where they're not? So what are the human rights and environmental impacts of their investments?
You can see corporates moving in the right direction, but politicians are still behaving as if in the old mindset that actually, we have to be deferential because we want to have economic growth. The only way is to reduce red tape and therefore get them in. But we know of many, there are, collections of CEOs globally who are doing the right thing. And we've just heard, there are efforts being made and measurable efforts. But it's that mismatch that politicians, and we have a certain demographic of politicians making those decisions, by the way, we're not going to have that old-fashioned view that, if we don't reduce red tape, we won't get finance, because actually, climate and digitalization is going to be whacking us in the face.
I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about what the role of a central bank is in the community. A lot of people think that central banks are about financing the economy. This is not the case. And actually, the problem is not a lack of finance. There is plenty of money. We've been more or less printing money for the last 7 years. There is trillions of money. The problem is you need the right incentives for companies to invest in those.
It's a rare opportunity. You are the taxman of Europe, if I can call you that. You can have behavioral taxation. You can use tax to create, normative behavior. You can nudge the system because of who you tax, how you tax it.
I think there were people, let's say, in the previous century or in the 19th century, sort of industrialists who were building hospitals and social housing. So, it's not a novelty that the private sector participates in government and societal change. What we are facing now is speed. In Europe, we have a lot of regulation. It's a lot of regulation that we have on environmental issues, on sustainability issues, on social issues. It's not enough. It's just not, you can regulate people to death, but if you do not use additional incentives, market-based incentives, who bring in the private sector in a different way, then you cannot achieve the results fast enough. If you look at all behavior, all the green taxes, for example, if you add them all together, the plastics, the energy, whatever taxes, all of them together, they are around 2.2% of European GDP for the last 10 years. So we have not increased the burden that it is linked to the environment.
You see an imbalance of social value. If you regard taxation and its result and impact as a reflection on that social value, then there's a bit of an imbalance potentially. We as a think tank feel that taxation can play a much more of a pro-social role.
We don't tax where the company is. We tax where the customers are in a certain way. We have a certain redistribution. We need to get our priorities right, and this we need consensus. We need consensus from the civil society, we need consensus from the business sector, and we need the signals that coming from us to align.
Please do reflect on what you've heard so far. You might just want to explain to people what We Move Europe does.
Yep.
So we get a sense of the context you're coming from.
Great, thank you. How many of you, please raise your hands, either have children or nieces and nephews in your lives? Okay. How many of you are worried about the state of the planet that we might be leaving behind to those children? How many of you are worried about the state of inequality and stability in the world that we're leaving behind for those kids? Right, good number. It's to make this debate a little bit more human and a bit more down to earth, because I think if we had some of those children in the room today, and maybe just think about some of those kids you're thinking about, I think they'd ask the question, why? And sometimes we are so structured into the thinking of an economic system that was set up in the 1970s, and we can't think beyond it. But that has to radically change. I met a certain commissioner, no names will be provided, and it was about the issue of amending a regulation in order to end the export of specific pesticides to the global south. Now, those pesticides have been banned in Europe because they are bad for health and they are bad for the environment. We said, look, surely this is a no-brainer, surely this just stops, right? And the commissioner said, no, because the chemical industry is in trouble financially since the crisis, and there's jobs, and if I shout about this inside the College of Commissioners, what my college will tell me is you're trying to destroy European industry and European jobs. The number of jobs they're talking about that are producing the particular kinds of pesticides they're talking about are minuscule. So This, for me, versus Europe consistently talking about a Europe of values, we don't get to do the two things at the same time, right? Like, you can say, and this is another thing that I heard in that meeting, well, if we don't do it, other regions in the world will do this. And I know what my colleagues in the Global South would say, what kind of an argument is that? How can you stand up and say you're a Europe of values and at the same time say, well, if we don't export poisonous pesticides to the Global South, others will do it? There seems to have been some progress on the side of not investing anymore in fossil fuels. I would love to hear that that is the case. What would the kids say to that, and what should we say to that, really? I'm just dying for one corporate actor to break the line and say, actually, we earn too much money and we want to increase that.
We're talking about a unified society versus an anarcho-capitalistic one. What I haven't heard about is the judicial repercussions that can be used. So I know that I'm selling this chemical, this pesticide to X company, and people are going to die from it. If I know about it internationally, I should be subject to criminal prosecution.
My challenge to you is, what would you like to see happen, right? And again, I say to you, think about accountability, public accountability of commissioners, as much as you think about corporate accountability.
For as long as, in the social contract we currently have, most of the meetings that the commissioners have are with business, I'm not surprised that they are swayed in a certain way. So something structural needs to change in how the actual lobby setup is happening in Europe. We keep saying, yes, of course it's about growth and redistribution, but we've got all these indicators for growth and nearly no indicators for redistribution.
But I think when we look at the society, they also care about the spending side of the government. So we have to be able to balance well the revenue side with the spending side. We need simplicity, we need more internal market, we think we need a certain more common approach across Europe, because otherwise we have a lot of distortions and lack of transparency. You know, I think we need to have positive elements. We need to have positive engagement, positive signals, and alignments of issues.
We live in a world where you have what is legal, what is authorized, what is undoubtedly good, and then you have a huge gray zone in between the two. And people have very different opinions about what one should do or not do among, what is legal. If you stop financing oil and gas today, you are going to have gas prices back at 300 euro per megawatt hour, because stopping financing oil and gas today is just a bad idea. That we put into public debate and on the shoulders of companies a lot of societal debates that are extremely complex, and at the end of the day should be the responsibility of elected bodies. Because if it's true that it's a bad idea to invest today in exploration of oil and gas, it should be forbidden. That's it. But if you have supply destruction today before demand destruction, you're going to have a revolution, people in the street. It's just not going to work.
Isn't it the point of debate to have conflicting views? So we might reach a point. We might reach a point of solution. Because if we just did it through a bubble, we're not going to make any progress. And this has been heartening that there are such diverging views. But this is exactly what Europe should be about.
I mean, it's been a fantastic debate, and definitely with very varied viewpoints put across. But that's the point of a debate, but that's the point of a society as well. It's the role of business as well to lean in to this very difficult debate. I'm representing a payments business, and when Gerasimos, when you talk about spending, that's the business that we enable. We enable people to spend safely, confidently, securely, and to do that in a digital fashion. We have an ability to educate consumers. When you are spending, are you spending in a way that is environmentally supportive? Are you spending in a way that creates a conscious consumer? We have a balance sheet, like government, although smaller, but we have a significant balance sheet, and that allows us to be creative. It cannot be regulated, it cannot be top-down. It needs to be this coalition of voices that sit at a table and discuss these very complex matters in a way that ensures that we are on a positive trajectory and a positive momentum for change. But it is about working together to do that.